Welcome to another exciting episode of Creative Impact. Today's topic is on the role of branding agencies. As we know, branding agencies play many important roles in society as they help businesses craft a distinct identity that actually resonates with their target audience, which in turn can impact societal consumption patterns. Not only that, but by helping businesses succeed in competitive markets, branding agencies contribute to economic growth. They also play a role in promoting societal causes. Increasingly, branding agencies are working with companies to advocate various social causes and ethical consumption to resolve specific problems. Overall, branding agencies contribute to global connectivity by helping companies establish an international presence. Joining us today is Tom Morgan, the head of strategy and founder of Nonspace, a creative consultancy that's transforming the way brands connect with culture and technology. Tom is known for his cutting-edge approach to developing strategies that help brands stay ahead of cultural shifts while fostering authentic connections. We'll dive into his journey as the founder of Nonspace and his thoughts on how luxury creativity and technology intersect in today's fast-paced world. Hello, Tom. Great to see you.
Hello, Namin. Thank you so much.
So you are currently in Norway, Bergen. You've set up your successful branding agency. You've made a transition in your career a long time ago from academia. Take us through to your beginning and what inspired you to go down the path of a branding agency.
Well, it's a great it's a great question for me because it's all sort of happy accident, really. Um, I was very fortunate to have excellent teachers around me when I was young, and I was exposed to, I suppose, quite a sort of mature understanding of the design world. So at quite an early age, I sort of had this aspiration to be the sort of next Philippe Stark or Ross Lovegrove as a product designer. And so I pursued that, and I did that for a while. And I had the sort of ideas of grandeur that products can change the world. Um, and I sort of fell into academia after a sort of short career as a product designer. And that led into design management and luxury brand management, and then into creative leadership. I had a wonderful time working with academics from many different fields, from international relations and theatre and business and management. And that sort of took me on a path of more around the ideas that it's not products that change the world, but people and shared ideas. And brands and branding had always been sort of part of my career. So yes, I moved to Norway around 10 years ago, and there sort of really moved into the area of branding and brand management. Um, yeah, so and ever since have been sort of a full-time brand strategist.
That sounds really exciting. It must be. I remember, obviously we worked together in the past in London, and I do remember you being extremely creative with your approach, even to education and the way you set up your learning environment, and we could see the natural progression to that. It's very interesting that you went to Norway. Norway is a creative hub, and it's very well known for some of its local brands in fashion, in branding agencies and advertisements. What's the culture like in Norway in terms of creativity?
Well, I mean that it's it's not necessarily how often it is perceived. We have this sort of great idea as, you know, the generic Nordic, Scandinavian aesthetic and culture. Norway is quite unique, for many different reasons. One of which, of course, is because it's a very sort of independent nation, culturally and also economically. And so a lot of brands are traditionally very local. Right? There is no Lego, no Carlsberg, no Volvo out of Norway. The Norwegian way of working is very hard. It's very honest. It's modest, and so there's a sort of interesting uniqueness to Norway which not many people capture. And the resources are there, but the human resources are not. So in the last sort of 20 years, the nation sort of transformed a great deal when it comes to this. A lot more international influence of brands have come in. And then at the same time, the way in which the brands that are local are competing and moving outside of the country across many different sectors. Still today, most of the economy is oil and gas, but of course,
Mhm.
a strong tradition of fish. But the nation is going to diversify in its economy. So there's a lot of tech startups. And like you mentioned, a lot of really interesting fashion brands which are coming out of the country as well. And travel and tourism is booming. The nation's always been a sort of bucket list destination for just, I mean, it is just a gorgeous country. But the cruise liners are not the sort of sustainable option for the future. And so, cold is the new hot in the sort of luxury resort and travel and tourism industry. So Norway is really developing a kind of unique position, which is not like the other Nordic nations in that area as well. So there's a lot of really exciting things. And again, it's a small nation, about 5 million people in quite a large country. It's narrow, but it's very long. And so that means, creativity is something that by default has, to get by, you have to do things creatively. We do not have the people power um, to do all of the things that's needed. So finding alternative ways of doing things, whether it be tech startup, whether it be travel and tourism in hospitality, it's it's finding those unique things of which Norway has to offer.
Yes, I agree with you. It's a magical country. I've been there myself a few times, and I recall taking one of these cruise liners that take you along the entire coast, all the way from Tromsø down to Bergen. It took about 6 days on the Hurtigruten, and it was magical. Absolutely nothing like I've seen before. And I agree with you. I've observed the culture and the element of being modest, even with the high net worth individuals in Norway, the way they assert their status or wealth is very, very different. And which brings me to my next thought. What's the relationship like with luxury consumption?
Well, and that's really interesting because there's a generational shift. So there is a sort of, I suppose you could say, a classic Northern European puritanical sort of edge to it, and the brands have traditionally been somewhat sort of waspy, as the French may put it, sort of the Ralph Lauren style of white Anglo-Saxon sort of Protestant branding in that area. But that's changed a lot. So the show of wealth is something that's not socially, acceptable too much. So you find often that the Norwegians are fantastically well traveled. So the show of wealth may be outside of the country as much as more than it would be at home. But one great example of how this is changing, I think, and an appreciation of what Norway has to offer, is a project that we worked on and continue to work with the hotel Britannia Hotel in Trondheim, which is about a 250 room hotel that was reborn from its incredible history from about 150 years ago. It was a hotel that was originally built for the salmon lords, which was the British and Irish aristocracy would come to Norway for sporting holidays, fly fishing predominantly, when the nation was not an oil-rich nation. And it was this gorgeous luxury hotel, and it's hosted most of the world's royal families over the years. And it sort of fell into a little bit of disrepair, and then it had a huge redevelopment around 6 or 7 years ago, and has been reborn into this absolutely amazing a member of the world leading hotels, 6 restaurants, a Michelin star, and it's a stunning experience in hospitality, but it's very unique in the way that it is. It's Nordic luxury, and when we started working on this brand, it was like, what really is the position that we take in the Nordics in this luxury sector? There was nothing really like it. There was some, the Grand in Oslo, and a few others in the Nordics, but this was really quite unique. And Trondheim is a small city, and here is this
Yes.
grand European hotel that's going to be opened. And sure enough, it had a huge success and was entirely, the first 2 years almost local guests.
Yeah.
So, people are starting to not necessarily travel for those experiences. They are, there's more of a show of wealth and individuality and these sorts of things. So it's a very interesting time, really, for brands to be moving into Norway, and also for these sort of emerging luxury brands from Norway offering something fresh and new internationally.
Yes. As you were saying that, I was remembering my trip to this town, and I think I've seen that hotel you're talking about. So it's very, very unique, actually. And in terms of you setting up your business there, as a branding agency, and you've done a wide variety of work with various industries: healthcare, fashion, luxury. What did you observe when you worked with all the luxury brands that you have worked with, whether it's the hotels or fashion and so on? And I think are you wearing one of your fashion clients' brands?
I am actually, yeah. This is an Oleana Genser, as we say
Aliana
in
Gensa.
Norway. Yeah, that's
Yes,
right. It's
yes,
a jumper from Oleana, which
yes.
is a perfect example, really. This is a locally manufactured products designed in the factory uh, just up the fjord from where we are, just outside of Bergen. Um, and when where traceability, responsibility, real authenticity is starting to become more and more valued. This is something that Norwegian brands are sort of really have naturally uh, in as part of their inheritance in a way. So I think that there's something really interesting to be in a country that's so fantastically wealthy, really, and when you look at it, and it's very expensive to manufacture, and yet it's not being manufactured the other side of the world. It's being produced here. And I think that's something quite special.
Yes, and I was going to come to the ethics point of view, actually, and the social responsibility perspective of these brands. But first, I wanted to know, when you sit back and reflect on all the work that you've done, since over 20 years now, in Norway, working with various clients, not coming from a single sort of sector. Do you observe any specific requirements that luxury branding requires in order to succeed that is perhaps not so significant in other industries, but is only particular to the luxury industry?
Yes, I think that's quite interesting, and something because many people don't quite see what's needed from outside of that sector. Um, if you are a consumer of of luxury goods or of that lifestyle, it can be very tempting, if you like, to want to work in that environment. If to work for a luxury brand would be wonderful. The reality, I think it's fair to say, is it's extremely demanding. Um, the level of quality, the devil is in the detail, of course, um, but the craft has to be extremely high. Um, and often we are, and I think this is something that's quite interesting in with Norwegian brands. And as I was saying, if we take Britannia as an example, the hotel, um, there isn't a huge amount of staff because that's first of all, most importantly, not how people want what hospitality should be to be served all the time, but rather there is a sort of independence of the guest. But you then create other touch points, so such as storytelling. And at Nonspace, we do a lot of this content in advertising and brand experiences, and from good old-fashioned newspapers, which we developed for Britannia, a newspaper for inside the hotel, which told the history and lifted the experiences to digital products that give from using augmented reality or whatever it may be to sort of balance off the fact that you don't have so many people around, but also that what you're doing is lifting the experience. And we all know that, of course, from if you eat at a fantastic restaurant, part of the experience is the knowledge of where the food has come from, who the chef is, and suddenly these things become really heightened. And that goes hand in hand with ethics, from traceability and responsibility to understanding who's been involved, where it comes from. And this is part of our enjoyment as well. So I think that the luxury sector is one that demands excellent storytelling, a lot of transparency. And in this day and age, it sounds rather cliche to say transparency, but essentially it doesn't matter what brand you are, what type of business you are, even if you're a business to business, your employees have they have a mouthpiece too, so everything is traceable more than ever before. So it's not something you can get away with either. So it's very demanding, I would say, as a sector, the luxury in luxury branding. Quality is essential in all areas.
Yes. And I feel that the culture has a huge influence also because um, although all luxury brands require high level of excellence in delivery and detail and storytelling, I get the sense that culture in the Norwegian culture has had a huge influence on the way luxury is perceived and consumed in among the Norwegians, for example. Are all your clients local?
No, in the I would say that within the um, those that would be in the sort of premium and luxury sector, yes, Norwegian. Um, and then in the tech sector, and in other areas, telecoms and these kinds of large market brands, more international. And I think that that comes down to really, again, the fact that that there's a certain sort of value of point of origin in branding, that you have to be both close to the origin of where the brand comes from, but also really understand the target audience. And I think that that's so. As an agency, we're very international, and that's kind of a point of difference for us in the Norwegian market, I think, and it's something we're kind of it's been important to establish that. So our creative director and design director and what have you are from overseas, Australia and Germany, experience from Switzerland, Leo Burnett's in New York. These are really important qualities to bring that to Norway, because you have to understand who it is that you're creating something for, as well as, you know, really understanding the nuances of your clients, of the business, of fashion or hospitality, travel and tourism, whatever it may be. So balancing that off is really important.
And coming back to your point about ethics and, you know, ethical consumption and ethical production, where does Nonspace come into that? And, you know, what role do you play in promoting that?
Well, I think that it's important to have the influence. I see a lot of pressure um, on a younger generation of creatives, which is both positive and also, I believe, in some ways quite negative on them, um, particularly in the area of field of design. You know, design that you're told in sort of contemporary education of design and the ethics thereof that design is causes all the problems. You know, 80% of the decisions are of the impact of a product or whatever it may be is decided at the point of design, and then that weight of responsibility is huge. So if design creates all these problems, design can save the world. And when you're a young designer, I think that's a little bit of the wrong pressure to apply, because in reality, we influence as much as we can. We're in a market whereby this is just hygiene now. You know, real good traceability ethics, the circularity of products, which is, I think, one of the greatest brand opportunities that there is with ESG and sustainability. This is all just part of business. So we work to help as much as we can. We've developed a platform recently called Brandspace, which is an ESG reporting platform. And in Europe, I mean, reporting on your energy and sustainability goals, that is as essential as financial reporting almost now, especially for investors who are looking for a portfolio of which meets these requirements. So, I think that what we do as in branding and advertising and branded experiences, it's the sort of downstream stuff. You can't really do that without a great product. So we do as much as we can to really look at what the qualities of that product is, whether that be a service or a product, an experience of some kind. So the key thing for us is to be truthful, not to present a brand to a customer in anything other than what it is, And that's about elevating that experience and presenting it to them in the way that we know that they're going to engage with it and enjoy it, cherish it. And in that way, I think that ethics is sort of a relationship that between the brand and the agency, between the designer and the product owner, between the customer and the advertiser. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Tom, perhaps in a few minutes, if you can just tell us all the things that Nonspace does? Because I know you do the branding element from start to finish, 360. You help with the storytelling, and you also are involved in design. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Nonspace does?
Yeah, so what we call we're an independent agency. We're a full service brand agency. So essentially we have sort of three areas of our team, which is design, advertising and communications, and tech. And when we say tech, that's everything from website and e-commerce platforms to actually digital products, from SaaS to DaaS, which is essentially a software as a service or a data as a service. And that's a big area that's growing in Norway in particular, being really leading in this space. A very technologically advanced nation. So our work is everything from brand design, and in that brand design, often it starts to go into other areas as well. The medium of a brand experience, a designed experience, is incredibly diverse now. So it's not about a logo and a typography and some color. It really is everything from even the scent of a brand, which is something we work with. We have
Yes.
a fantastic partner called Fitjar Islands, which is a client of ours that built that brand. It's a soapery on the west coast of Norway, but also they're a creative partner. So, what is the medium of a brand through scent? And it's a fantastically powerful medium because it anchors memory of an experience, but also the product itself. So to give you an example, that's where the complete other side of the market to luxury brands. We developed a product for to solve or to help solve the opioid epidemic, which was a pharmaceutical product. So that involved the product design um, of the unit itself, which is to be carried by people who suffer from opioid dependency, as well as first aiders and first responders, social workers, etc. So the brand of that being that it's a pharmaceutical product, and you can't really brand a pharmaceutical product, but it is a life-saving aid. Um, that went into product design, and that's an absolutely essential part of what the brand is, if you like. Oleana is another great example whereby when you're working with a fashion designer or a chef, those two are sort of the great two examples here. You have another creative director involved in the experience. It's their vision, it's their method, it's their stories. So so we collaborate a lot in those brand experiences through design, but then also through advertising and storytelling. Um, and that is everything from good old-fashioned advertising for, linear TV ads, working for the government for energy crisis communications, to simply, the sort of always-on service of working with a brand in reaching new markets, new customers, to then also making the experience of a product last longer, the joy of it. Um, and using those sorts of skills and techniques from advertising and marketing to be applying that to also solving problems which are traditionally not the realm of marketing and advertising, whether that be employee branding. A lot of companies, move with digital transformation. It has a big effect on the culture of the organization, where you might be employing 200 blue collar workers to do a job. Suddenly you need to also then employ 20 developers to do a job and into the organization. So that has a big effect on the culture of the workplace and the attractiveness of that company as well. So that's sort of, company culture is something that's really important, and that's sort of a collaboration of course, design and advertising, and then that experience also of tech.
That's actually quite insightful, Tom. You know, throughout the interview, there's been a lot of kind of nuggets of information there that I will be really reflecting on. So the nuances of delivering a luxury project to a client. Also, the role of culture in perceiving luxury is another really interesting thing. I was always aware of it, especially with the Norwegian culture, but I never thought about it in this way. And the last important part that you shared was, wow, I mean, the role of product design in being of service to society and humanity is just incredible. With that product that you mentioned, to solve the problem of opioids and so on. And also the role of ethics and social responsibility in someone like your company, Nonspace. You know, it has a huge role to play in society, and elevating really the quality, not just the quality of product and communication, but how we perceive innovation, how we perceived consumption.
No, I was going to say one thing. One of the very interesting things also is working with brands of which, you know, that one way of putting it is the sort of green and the brown brands, you know, the brands that are sort of born green, or they have these great promises of being highly ethical, versus those that, you know, have to transition from high energy, large consumption of carbon, whatever it may be. Actually, from a branding and communications point of view, you know, it's greenwashing is something everyone has to be highly aware of. But we see that those companies that are transitioning to be more ethical and sustainable and green have a greater desire and greater stories to tell, whereby those that go out with a, you know, lead in being sustainable can sometimes be a bit more cautious in what they say because there's more to lose. So actually, what I see in the market, and this is not just in Norway, this is with clients from around the world, and you can see this in all markets really, that traditional companies with legacy are now really being able to capitalize on, you know, the fact that they're not perfect and no one expects them to, but they've got great stories to tell and are making huge developments in all sectors, whether it be automotive to, you know, travel and tourism, fashion, whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. So much to reflect on. I think I'm going to be watching this episode again and making some notes to also share with students in some of my classes, because we do address these topics as well. Tom, thank you so much. I hope it's not too cold where you are.
It's a beautiful, crisp 4 degrees.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tom. I hope to catch up again soon.
Me too. Thank you, Namin. It's been a pleasure.